Welcome to another true crime story time, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Speaking of cases, roll 'em ad Zahara. Today's video is sponsored by Casetify. Now, I know a bunch of you have upgraded to that new iPhone 14. Girl, don't you dare try to put no ranky-dank case on that brand new iPhone 14. Don't do it. Casetify specializes in ultra-protective phone cases that aren't bulky. After all, your phone case shouldn't have to be built like a brick to be protective. Casetify's iPhone 14 Impact series includes their latest technology, EcoShock. Casetify is always looking for new ways to improve phone cases. With this new technology, you get the best of both worlds. Durability meets sleekness. Choose from an array of prints and designs. You can choose from various artists from their Artist Collab program, or you can customize your own design, like I've done here. I'm obsessed with my custom design. I love all of the new cases I got from Casetify. They also have other accessories like camera lens protectors, screen protectors, and phone straps with a card. Here is the phone strap that I got. It just says #MysteryMuse. They also sent this gold one as well. It's super long. I feel like I can use this as a necklace, girl. This is really nice. Their cases are 5 times the military standard, meaning it's been drop tested 130 times. It is said to provide protection up to an 11.5-foot drop. That's pretty high up. If that's not commitment to you having great iPhone protection, I don't know what is. All of Casetify's iPhone 14 cases are made from 65% recycled and plant-based materials. Whether you have upgraded to the new iPhone 14 or you still have an iPhone XS like me, head on over to Casetify.com for their latest iPhone 14 Impact Case series, as well as their cases for iPhone 13 and earlier devices. Go to Casetify.com/MysteryMuse today for 15% off your order. That's Casetify.com/MysteryMuse. Thank you again to Casetify for sponsoring this video, and thank you so much to you guys for making this possible. Now let's get into today's case, the true crime case. Yeah, okay, let's go. Really quick, today's video is going to be featuring the Dark Fantasy palette by Beauty Bay. All the other products will be linked in the description below. You guys know the drill. I am not a professional, and the comment section is a privilege. Don't fuck it up. So this story all takes place in 1998 in Jacksonville, Florida, where 25-year-old Cory Parker lived. She had moved there from Rochester, New York to attend college. Now, this was a huge climate change for Cory, but one that she absolutely loved because Cory always dreamed of living in a place with warm weather. That was like her dream. So this was perfect for her, and it just made moving to a new place easier. I can definitely second that. When you're moving really far away from your family and your friends and where you grew up, it does make it a lot easier when you're moving to a place where you actually enjoy the weather. And that's coming from someone who moved from Chicago to LA. Do you guys know anything about this e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer? Like, is this ish gonna go translucent anytime soon? Because it looks white. It looks very white. Okay, anyway. Now, Cory was a very beautiful young woman. She was tall, brunette. She had a gorgeous smile, and her friends and family described her as having a presence about her. When she entered the room, there wasn't anyone who didn't notice her. She was such a kind-hearted person as well. So she was always nice to people. That was another thing that made people recognize her. Because Cory was very attractive and a kind girl, Cory would attract a lot of different types of folks, people. Unfortunately, some that weren't so good. And she ended up having a number of stalkers, a number of people who just really took an interest in her. When you're an attractive young woman, you have to be careful. When you're a young woman, period, you got to be careful. But if you're attractive, it's even worse. Not that she asked for that, but a lot of people gravitated to her and her energy because she was such a bright light and so kind and open and free-spirited. And she also was a very attractive woman. So you can imagine she had a lot of people that were interested in her and just that really liked her. Cory graduated from Brighton High School. She worked as a waitress in a restaurant in Atlantic Beach called Ragtime Tavern. Ragtime Tavern, girl. Okay. I don't know what to say about that. I just thought about a bunch of Raggedy Ann dolls sitting at the bar in this tavern. Cory loved to spend time with her girlfriends. She would have girls' night in, movie nights. They would also have girls' nights out. And they would oftentimes spend a lot of their pastime at the beach. And that was one of the things that Cory really loved to do with her girlfriends. In November of 1998, when everybody else was going or making plans to go back home to visit their families for the holiday season, Cory ended up staying behind because of her work schedule. She wasn't able to go back home for Thanksgiving, and she decided that she would just stay behind and have a Friendsgiving instead. Her work schedule had her working on the holidays, so she wasn't able to go back home. You know, she just wanted to make the extra money for school. So on the evening of November 26, 1998, Cory went to a local bar called Ritz with a few of her friends. The girls went out and they had an amazing time dancing and talking and having drinks. Cory's friend Tiffany had made plans to spend the night at Cory's, but plans changed, and at the end of the night, her friend Tiffany decided that she wasn't going to stay over, that she would go home. So Cory ended up staying home alone that night. So Cory arrived home around 1 a.m. in the morning. She was so exhausted from the bar that she just took her clothes off and passed out in the bed. You know those days when you're just like super exhausted and you can barely undress yourself, but you're like, okay, I gotta at least take off my pants. That morning, Cory was due to work an early shift, but she never showed up. Here we go. Not only that, she never called into work either. Ooh, I forgot to put on foundation. Her manager tried to call her, but they couldn't get in contact with her, so they became increasingly alarmed. This was not like Cory at all. She was a very responsible young woman. She would never just not show up and not call into work. This didn't make any sense. One of her co-workers, a cook, volunteered to go over and check on her, and the manager approved it. After numerous attempts of knocking on the door and getting no response, he left back to the restaurant and reported that no one had answered the door at Cory's apartment. Then the manager got super concerned, and he asked the cook to go back to the apartment and check on her again, to double check and figure out what was going on, because he just knew something was wrong. This just wasn't right. Thank God for these types of people, I'm telling you. So the cook goes back to Cory's apartment and he is knocking on the door again. Again, he gets no answer, and so he starts snooping around and he sees that one of the windows to her apartment was open. So he saw that it was like slightly ajar. So he was able to get his hand in there and crack the window even more. And as he pulls back the blinds, he sees a bloody leg. He's freaked out. He jumps out of there. He pulls back out of the window and he runs, like he books it back to the restaurant, and he's frantic. He's freaking out. He's telling his manager what he saw. I don't know why he didn't run to the police station or why he didn't get in contact with somebody that had a phone to run. I don't know. He tells his manager what he saw. His manager gets on the phone and calls 911. So 911 is called and they report an emergency at Cory's apartment that cops need to get there quick. So 2 officers show up to the scene and they're knocking on Cory's door, trying to see, if she will answer, saying, it's the police. Answer the door just in case somebody else is inside, because they have no idea. They don't know what's going on at this point. The first thing they notice is that Cory's car is there, but nobody's answering the door. The door is locked. So they start to walk around her apartment to see if they can get in any other way. And one of the officers find that her kitchen window is also opened. And they climb in through the kitchen window and they are able to let their partner in through the front door. because the front door had been locked. As the officers are walking through the apartment and they are looking around, they find Cory's lifeless body laying in her bed, propped up in the corner as though she had been like pushed into a corner. And she was completely nude. She had been stabbed multiple times. Her throat had been slit 3 times, and her legs were spread open, indicative of a sexual assault. I mean, it was bad. The officers described it as the most brutal crime scene they had ever seen. Crime scene investigators found Cory's clothes laying near the foot of the bed, folded neatly. In addition to that, they also found a pair of her underwear and her socks that had a single hair fiber on each item, so they sent it in to the forensics lab for testing. They also found a gold-plated Zippo lighter. Now, Cory did smoke, but according to friends and family members, she did not own a lighter like that. So this was also taken into evidence, and forensic scientists dusted for prints. But when the test came back, it was negative. There was no prints found on the lighter, which is crazy because somebody was smoking up in there, so there should have been somebody's prints on that lighter. Guys, my makeup is so hard today. I have no idea what's going on. Crime scene investigators found a blood stain on the kitchen sink. They also found blood stains on the kitchen windowsill, on the inside and outside of the windowsill. So they believe that this is how their perpetrator entered and exited the apartment. So Cory's body was sent over to the coroner's office for examination, and the medical examiners found that Cory had been stabbed 101 times. 54 of those stabs were post-mortem, meaning that somebody stabbed her 54 times after she was already dead. Her throat had been slit 3 times, and medical examiners came to the conclusion that this was the cause of her death, was her throat being slit, not the 101 times that she had been also stabbed. I mean, God, this guy just went crazy. Like, what was the point after that? Like, to just, I don't know what he was doing, wasting energy. Because of the manner in which she was murdered, investigators believe that the perpetrator knew the victim, because oftentimes overkill is an indication of the perpetrator knowing their victim. They believe that whoever had done this did know Cory. Investigators believe that this was personal. Although her body was posed in a sexually suggestive manner with her legs being spread apart, medical examiners found no sign of assault, meaning someone had just staged her that way. Now I'm really thinking what's going on. So initially, investigators had thought that the crime was sexually motivated, but now they were thinking maybe it was something else. They did find a number of defense wounds on Cory's hands and her arms, indicating that she had fought back. Forensic scientists found several different foreign hairs clutched in Cory's hands that didn't belong to her. One of the hairs still had an intact root. Forensic scientists compared the DNA found on the windowsill and the sink to the hair follicle, and the results came back. They matched. Now all investigators had to do was to look at their suspects. Now it's time to go into the palette. Oh my God. But anyway, back to the story. So police started to look into Cory's group of friends because, as you know, it is protocol to look at the people that are closest to the victim. And since Cory's friends were also the last ones to have been known to see her alive, they wanted to start there. Sometimes I feel like the finger is just better. That's what she said. There were a lot of rumors going around amongst her friends that her friend Tiffany was obsessed with Cory. That's right. Her friend, the one that was supposed to spend the night, that ended up not staying with her that night, out of the blue, when normally she would have probably stayed, that Tiffany. Girl. And get this, you guys, Tiffany knew details about Cory's murder that wasn't even released to the public yet. I think that's definitely a red flag, and y'all need to pick Tiffany's ass up and bring Tiffany down to the station, because, darling, that's a major red flag. Now, when police brought Tiffany in for questioning, she told investigators that she had called Cory around 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning. For what reason, I don't know, but she said she called Cory and that Cory answered the phone, but that she was sleeping. That's bizarre. And then apparently she went to Cory's house, but Cory didn't answer, so she left. When they were questioning Tiffany, they asked her about the night of the murder, like where she was and what happened and everything. Tiffany tells police that on the night of the murder, around 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning, she called Cory and Cory did answer the phone, but that Cory was sleeping. So that was pretty much the end of the conversation. She then went over to Cory's place, but Cory didn't answer the door. I'm just confused. Look, if you call your friend up on the phone and she in the bed and she's sleeping and she say, I'm sleeping. If you do that to me, if you show up on me, if you call me up and say, hey girl, what you doing? I'm like, listen, I'm asleep. First of all, I'm not answering the phone if I'm asleep, but I'm asleep. And you still come over? Girl, that don't make no sense. But anyway, so she said she spoke to Cory. Cory was alive and fine, but that Cory was sleeping. So, that was pretty much, they didn't have a very long conversation. Oh, child, I'm dipping in black. I love the color black, but I'm scared with it with makeup. Now, I want a circle look, so I don't want to do anything that's like, because my eyes are almond shaped, but I want to do like this circle kind of eye shape. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it with this. Of course, investigators checked the phone records, and the phone records showed that Tiffany never called Cory that night. Why would she lie about that? Why? Like, why would you say that you spoke to her that night, on the night of the murder, around 2:33 a.m., which is around the same time that the murder would have taken place? Say that she answered the phone, you actually spoke to her, but you didn't. Put the cuffs on. It's time for her to go. I'm serious. I would already arrested her. I would have like, what's that? Excuse me. You're under arrest. You have a right to remain silent. I guess that's why I'm not a police officer. In addition to that, Tiffany was opening her mouth, telling police details about the crime that nobody else knew. They were trying to figure out how she knew these details, saying that Tiffany had been stabbed. How did she know all of this if she wasn't there? If she left. They just couldn't figure it out. And with further investigation into Tiffany's past and in her relationship with Cory, they found out that Tiffany was bi-curious and that she had some sort of romantic feelings for Cory. Well, something was developing. Also, they showed that Tiffany had called Cory on other days multiple times, and that she was constantly calling and texting Cory, and that she seemed to be obsessed with Cory and basically stalking her as well. Everybody seemed to like Cory and be obsessed with Cory. I'm not gonna lie, I've had friends that I don't think they were bi or anything that, was just kind of crazy about the friendship. So maybe this was that case. Girl, why do I look like the hamburger bandit from McDonald's? Is that his name? Is there even a hamburger bandit, or did I just make that up? Listen, I promise you it's gonna look okay. When police asked Tiffany to give them a sample of her DNA, she refused and was uncooperative, and she hired a lawyer almost immediately. So this to them was like a telltale sign that obviously Tiffany had something to do with this. Why would you even say that you had spoken to her that night or anything, babes? You should have shut the up. Oh wow, this is taking a turn. Investigators did end up getting a court order for Tiffany's DNA, and they were able to collect samples from her, and those samples were sent off to the forensics lab for testing. However, during that time, forensic scientists were doing a couple of tests. They came across a major clue to the identity of the perpetrator. Forensic scientists found chromosome Y in the blood stain that was left at the crime scene. Now, chromosome Y is found only in males, not in females. So it couldn't have been Tiffany who had committed the murder. It had to be somebody else. Also, Tiffany's DNA came back and it wasn't a match, of course, because unless Tiffany has some major secret she's been keeping that nobody knows about, I mean, it's possible. At this point, Tiffany was eliminated as a suspect, and investigators believe that Tiffany told them all of this stuff that wasn't true, like she called and had spoken to Cory when Cory was asleep or whatever. Obviously, that never happened, so why would she lie about something like that? Well, investigators believe that she told that lie because she wanted to seem more important to Cory than she actually was. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy all in and of itself. The next suspect on the list was Cory's boyfriend, David. Cory and David had just recently gotten into a relationship, so it was fairly new. And Cory was in love with this guy. They were really good together. Investigators didn't find anything in their past, like they had any arguments or any problems. Before Tiffany left, though, she had something really important that she wanted to share with police. She told investigators that she wasn't the one that was obsessed with Cory, that it was actually a coworker of theirs named Eric, and that they needed to look into him because he was stalking Cory. Now, girl, you done made up so many damn stories. We don't know who to trust. So now she's saying that it's this guy, Eric, and that investigators should look into this guy because he would oftentimes call Cory multiple times a day, like dozens of times a day. One day he called her 100 times in one day. I mean, that's fucking crazy. If you call me that many times, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're my mama. If you call me that many times, we're going to have a problem. He was hitting her up like that. And so police thought, okay, that's bizarre for sure. And they went to have a little chat with Eric. It was said that Eric had asked Cory out before and Cory had denied him and told him that she didn't want anything with him, but that they worked together. He would oftentimes flirt with her and follow her around at work. He was constantly bothering her. Like he had a major crush on her. It was definitely stalker status. He had something for Cory, but Cory did not like him back. She was not reciprocating those feelings towards him. And so investigators believe that this might have been a motive for Eric to kill her. Maybe he was upset because Cory didn't reciprocate his feelings. They weren't sure, but one thing was for sure. They needed to have a chat with Eric. So they bring Eric down to the station and Eric starts talking. And they find out that Eric actually has a history of mental illness. They're able to back this up with his medical records, which they, looked into. He admits to them that, he has a history of mental illness. He goes on to tell police that he has had fantasies about murdering women before, and that he gets these ideas and he can't get them out of his head. He says that he knew Cory and that he liked Cory, but that he didn't harm her. He goes on to say that he's not going to lie, though. He's had fantasies about, assaulting her and murdering her, but that he didn't do it. And police said, how, if you would have done this to her, how would you have done it? And you guys, he describes in full detail how he would have murdered Cory if he'd done it. And it is exactly the way Cory was murdered. And remember, you guys, this information wasn't released, or supposedly wasn't released to the public. So I don't know how everybody knows. Tiffany knows, Eric knows. What, were they both in on it? Who knows? I don't know. That's one thing for sure. They also found out that Eric had been off his medication during the time of the murder, and at that point he was off his medication at that point as well. In addition to all of this, Eric tells investigators how in love he was with Cory and how he had invited Cory over for a Thanksgiving dinner because she was not going to be able to go back home to spend Thanksgiving with her family because of her work schedule. So this also piques investigators' interest. If he worked with her, not only did he know her schedule, he also invited her over for Thanksgiving dinner. So investigators are thinking, well, did Cory have something going on with him possibly? However, friends and family members deny that Cory had anything to do with Eric. They said that Eric was just a co-worker that she worked with, and he had mistaken her kindness for her liking him back. The police were thinking, well, perhaps maybe he took it a little bit further. That night, maybe he thought that she wanted something with him when she didn't, and things got out of hand, and then he murdered her. All of the circumstantial evidence is pointing to Eric at this point, like everything, including Eric's statement and his fantasies about wanting to murder Cory. With this information, police get a search warrant and they search Eric's apartment. Investigators find a bloody knife in Eric's apartment. They take a sample of Eric's DNA and a sample from the knife, and they compare it to the blood samples that they found at the crime scene. The blood samples come back. They aren't a match. It isn't Eric's blood. Come to find out, the blood that they found in Eric's apartment was from his acne. So gross. So gross. It looked like Eric was their guy, but he wasn't. So if Eric wasn't their guy, then who was? Almost a year and a half later, and police have no new leads. Until in the early spring of 2000, a friend of Cory's came forward with some information regarding one of Cory's neighbors, Robert Denny. She said that Robert was a weirdo. No, she didn't say that, but that's what I think. Police did a background check, and they found out that murder ran in Robert's family. I mean, how does murder run in your family? Like, there's some serious issues. This is why you need to heal these childhood wounds. Seriously. I know y'all don't want to hear me talking about my spiritual stuff, but when Robert was a boy, his brother killed a woman, stabbing her 98 times. Sounds like he was like imitating his brother. I don't know. For what? For what? For what? Police also discovered that Robert had relocated to Easton, Maryland, why he moving over there? At this point, it is in July of 2000, and because he is in Easton, Maryland, Jacksonville Police Department has no jurisdiction over there. So they have to ask the Easton Police Department if they would help them out and somehow get Robert Denny's DNA. They found out that shortly after Cory's murder, Robert had gone into work and he started abruptly crying. He was just having these crying outbursts at work, and he told friends and co-workers that he wasn't doing well and that he needed to leave. He needed to go to Easton, Maryland, because his son had gotten into a car accident and passed away, which was an absolute lie, by the way, because when police did their investigation, they discovered that Robert didn't have any children. He told this to his manager and his co-workers, and they even had a little fund set up for him that they were donating money to. And one day when Robert's sister had come into the restaurant where he used to work, which by the way was some sort of steakhouse that wasn't that far away from Cory's job, and they saw her, the manager gave the money they collected to her and told her that it was for Robert's son, who had passed away. His sister was like, "What are you talking about? Robert doesn't have a son." So She had no idea what that they were talking about. And they had to explain the whole thing to her. Well, he told us he had a son that passed away, and she said it's impossible. He doesn't have any children. And he managed to collect money for his move. Can you believe this guy? Oh my God. They discovered that Robert did live in the same complex as Cory, like I said, and that he would oftentimes watch her from his window. Like one of the windows in his apartment had a direct bird's eye view into Cory's apartment. And they found out that he would oftentimes watch Cory undress and just in her apartment, in her privacy. He would be watching her. He would tell people at work, like other dudes and stuff, other guys, that he would watch Cory and that he would jerk off to her. Do what you do, okay? Do what you do. But an invasion of privacy? Come on, dude. When his sister spoke to police, she told them that he was a very strange character, that one night when he was living with them meaning her and her husband, that she woke up one night and he was standing over her bed. I mean, that is bizarre. You better not do that to me. Well, that's absolutely terrifying. Imagine having a brother like that. Wow, what a brother. What a guy. Now, when police caught up with Cory, they found him living with a 53-year-old woman, and he was living with this woman and her husband, and he was actually having an affair with this woman right underneath her husband's nose, right in their home. She brought Cory there, and they were having an affair. Like, I'm like, did this guy, what? I mean, why would you let another man move in with you and your wife? Or you and your daughter, or you and any other female that you care about? No way, Jose. Jacksonville Police Department tried to collect Robert Denny's DNA on several different occasions, but were unable to obtain it. Now, they brought him in for something else. They told him that they were bringing him down there for a fight or another crime that had occurred. I think it was like a bar fight or something. They did notice that Robert smoked. They were thinking that maybe they would be able to get a sample of his DNA from his cigarettes. However, every time Robert was in the interview room with them, he would put his cigarettes in his pocket or behind his ear. He would never leave the cigarette butt in an ashtray or something like that. Now, this was back in the day when you could smoke indoors. You can't do that now, clearly. First, they just asked him for his DNA. He said no. Then they offered him a bottle of water, but he refused. They even tried to get him to seal an envelope, like lick the envelope to seal it. And it just got to the point where Robert called investigators out and was like, listen, you tried to get my DNA on multiple different occasions. Basically, and told investigators that he knew what they were up to and that it was not going to happen. After investigators were unable to successfully obtain a sample of Robert's DNA, so they set up surveillance outside of his place of employment and they watched him. This guy was meticulous. He would go outside every 45 minutes to have a smoke break. We're talking a chain smoker. And he never once left a cigarette bud outside. He never once left a cigarette butt on the ground, in a trash can, on the side. Never. He always put the cigarette bud back into his pocket or behind his ear. So, I mean, he was very, very smart, and he knew investigators were onto him, and he was like, At this point, investigators were thinking there's no way we're ever going to get a DNA sample from this guy. Like, he's too good. We're not going to get it. He's right. Until one day when Robert went outside for a cigarette break, and while smoking his cigarette, he did his usual thing. After he was done with his cigarette, he put it in his pocket, and then he spit on the ground. And can you imagine being one of those investigators in that car, waiting and waiting and waiting for weeks, maybe even months, for this guy to just drop a cigarette? And he never does. He's meticulous and just thinking, we're not going to get it. It's something that's just so human and so automatic for people that, do that, that I don't think Robert thought twice about it, He probably just did it. He was so focused on making sure police did not get his DNA off the cigarettes that he completely forgot. And in a moment of sheer luck, he let his guard down and he spit on the ground. And investigators were ready to jump out of their seats and grab that DNA. And he didn't just spit once, he spit 3 different times, you guys. And it had just rained, so it was perfect because the saliva was sitting on top of the rainwater. In some way, it preserved the DNA and the saliva. It was like basically a clean swab, like taking a clean swab from him. That is how perfect it was. I mean, the science of all of this. Seriously, I'm very, very impressed. So at this point in the investigation, the FBI has joined the case, and a few weeks later, the Jacksonville Police Department sends the DNA over to the FBI, to their forensics lab for testing. And what do you know? Robert's DNA matched the blood that they found on the windowsill and the kitchen countertop. And on November 28th, 2000, 2 years after Cory's murder, Robert Denny was arrested. And it's funny because the police said that Robert appeared dazed and confused. He denied killing Cory, and he told the police that the evidence you have on me is bullshit. Because remember, you guys, at this point, he was being very careful to give his DNA. He was meticulous. So he's thinking there's no way that these guys got anything on me. I never dropped a cigarette. But he forgot that he spit. And that's so nasty, but he did it. The evidence that they had, prosecutors were able to prove that Robert had been watching Cory for some time. They believe that Robert most likely was already in the home on the night of her murder when she had returned. They believe that he killed Cory because he wanted to compete with his brother. I'm sorry, I didn't know that was a real competition. I don't know how that would be a win, but he wanted to win for, I don't know, the most stabs. I don't know. It's really sick. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, on May 9th, 2005, after just 45 minutes of deliberation, the jury found Robert Denny guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Till this day, Robert still denies killing Cory. I don't know why, because his DNA was there. He's asking for a retrial, claiming that the evidence had been tampered with. What did you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, you can check out some of my other episodes. I'll leave them linked on the screen right here or right here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please share because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys next time with another true crime story time. Bye.